Hey kids, this is Princess Read-A-Lot from Kids Reading Corner 207. And today we're going to read Mrs. McBloom, Clean Up Your Classroom by Kelly DiPucchio. Illustrated by Guy Francis. Mrs. McBloom, clean up your classroom. In fact, that nearly every school from Kennebunkport, Maine to Chicxulub, Alaska has one teacher whose classroom is a sorry, jumbled up mess. Knickerbocker Elementary in the pint-sized town of Up Yonder was no exception. Mrs. McBloom in room 5 had a classroom that would impress even the most clutter-loving junkyard dog. It was a heap of mess on account of her never cleaning it, not once in 50 years of teaching. Every year, Mrs. McBloom's students yammered, "Mrs. McBloom, clean up your classroom." For decades, Principal Pumpernickel pleaded, "Mrs. McBloom, clean up your classroom." 22 janitors came and went over the years. They all grumbled, "Mrs. McBloom, clean up your classroom." "Oh, higgly-piggly," Mrs. McBloom said. "It's on my to-do list." Truth is, it had been on her to-do list for nearly 45 years. See, it's listed right here above. Take a fancy schmancy cruise. Room 5 hadn't always been an eye-popping, heart-stopping disaster. When Mrs. McBloom started teaching, long before that Armstrong fella set his tootsies on the moon, it looked so nice, no kid would think that it would become a mess. Round about the time Principal Pumpernickel was a little nipper in her classroom, it looked like this. Now, 1 week before Mrs. McBloom was fixing to retire, her room looked like this. Giant sunflowers drooped over desks like decorative lamps. Tangly vines with fat green beans climbed the walls, and a genuine, full-grown ruby-red apple tree grew smack dab in the middle of her classroom. Years of science experiments had left all kinds of critters hopping and clucking and flying around room 5. Chickens laid eggs in the coat cubbies. Butterflies fluttered back and forth between children's heads and pencil erasers. There were more books stacked in Mrs. McBloom's room than there were up in the entire Up Yonder library, and you could bet your uncle's monkey that there were more piles of paper crammed into room 5 than there were in the entire Up Yonder paper airplane factory down the road. Now something drastic had to be done real quick. Sweet young Miss Bumblesprout was preparing to take Mrs. McBloom's place in the fall. Miss Bumblesprout fretted, "Mrs. McBloom, clean up your classroom. Pretty please?" "Oh, higgly-piggly," sighed Mrs. McBloom, scratching her beehive hairdo. "I've backed myself into a pickle. How am I ever going to get this room cleaned up in a jiffy?" The rooster perched on the piano belted out a hearty cock-a-doodle-doo. "That's a humdinger of an idea, Rudy." "Much obliged," said Miss McBloom. Mrs. McBloom moved a cluster of frogs aside and wrote in the sign on the board, "Homework. Come up with an idea to get room 5 tidy lickety-split. Be creative. Stretch your imagination and use your noggin. Anything goes." By the end of the following week, the whole class was buzzing with excitement. One by one, kids came to the front of the room, just past the mushroom patch, but before the mountain of unclaimed mittens and gym sneakers to share their ideas. Sam Wigglesworth had invented a super-duper pickle upper thingamabob. It can pick up from 0 to 10 in 60 seconds. Lily Lumpkin suggested Mrs. McBloom to hire a magician. Then, abracadabra, everything will disappear. Cooper Butterbaker brought in a herd of hungry goats from his daddy's farm to demonstrate their voracious appetites. They once ate a rusty pickup truck in 3 hours flat. On and on the ideas kept coming. Mrs. McBloom recorded them on the chalkboard. Georgia Peachpit was the last student to raise her hand. She stepped over the world globe, shooed Cooper's goats, and unrolled a colorful poster board. Help Mrs. McBloom clean up her classroom today. All of Up Yonder is invited Saturday, 10 a.m. If each citizen shows up to remove one item, room 5 will be tidy lickety-split. Free eggs and apples to everyone who helps. By Georgia, that's it, hollered Mrs. McBloom. A dilly of an idea. Word of help Mrs. McBloom clean up her classroom day spread through the town faster than Corky Redman's chickenpox in the spring of '99. Seeing as nearly every citizen of Up Yonder had been a student of Mrs. McBloom's at one time or another, the whole town showed up on Saturday to help. A line of loop-de-loop through the halls, out the door, down the hill, past the water tower. Single files, folks moseyed through room 5, picked up one item, and moved on. The Up Yonder kazoo band provided live entertainment. The PTA passed out free refreshments, and Miss McBloom got to personally shake hands with all her former students. She bawled like a baby in wet breeches. Heavens to belly buttons! The treasures pulled from the revel were astounding. Long-lost works of art, important historical documents, and rare geological finds were rediscovered. The Up Yonder parade of pickers went on plucking for hours. Among other things, they fished out 4 feather quill pens, a pot-bellied stove, 3 buffalo nickels, a postcard signed by President Roosevelt, 13 petrified cupcakes, a poodle skirt, howdy doodly coffee mug, a litter of kittens, a rotary dial phone, and a flag with 48 stars. Clay Potter found his library book. It was 35 years overdue. Fanny Freckle found her Elvis Presley lunchbox. Her lunch was still in it. P.U. And after 20 years without them, Billy Brownbuckle finally got his eyeglasses back. It's a miracle. I can see. By sundown, room 5 was completely cleaned out. The apple tree was replanted next to the playground and dedicated to Mrs. McBloom. Principal Pumpernickel awarded Georgia the prestigious Kinkerbockel Whippersnapper Award for Excellence. Pleasant use of your noggin, Mrs. Peachpit. Thank you, sir. All in all, it was a mighty fine day. for all the good folks of up yonder. In the days that followed, the town held the granddaddy of all yard sales and sold all the 5 knickknacks, critters, and whatnots that had been uncovered from room 5. The money raised was used to send Miss McBloom on a fancy schmancy cruise. Oh, higgly piggly, bless your hearts, bon voyage! And for sweet young Miss Bumblesprout, she began her teaching career that fall in gustified up, piffed up, tidy room 5. Good morning, class. Open your science books. Today we are going to plant pumpkin seeds. The end. Thanks for listening and read lots.